Alright, another lovely day at the Jeep. So, if you see my previous video, you'll know that I did some work to my axle shaft over here because I was having a bit of a problem. If you've ever done some hardcore wheeling on big tires, you know that these U-joint caps like to wiggle free after running around for a while. So I put in some full ring clips, I clearanced them out, and they seem to be holding up. I took them on a trip and drove it around, and they don't really seem like they're breaking free, so that's good. They did work, and the axle shafts didn't snap. But maybe you're less into cutting and more into welding. Well, we've got a solution for you as well. Now, this solution is going to be a basically permanent solution. So usually when an axle shaft breaks up front, most of the time it's going to be the U-joint. Either the U-joint snaps or the cap falls out or something happens like that. And at that point, the ears are bent up and you can't use the shaft anyway. Now, if you've actually snapped a Dana 30 shaft, then, you know, you might have some issues. But this is from Iron Rock Off-Road. This is their almost alloy kit. So this right here is basically just a piece of metal that's just, you know, cut and bent to fit over top of your U-joint cap. So what this does is it physically holds it in place, and you weld this around it, and it does two things. It keeps the U-joint from ever falling out. And the second thing is it also strengthens the ears so they don't bend and distort as much. So you're making it stronger, and you're keeping the caps in place. And you're saying, oh, well, what if I gotta change the U-joints? Well, either break out the grinder or go to the junkyard, because it's going to be a bitch to get them back out. So, while you're doing this upgrade, I highly recommend putting in new U-joints, because these are going to be the last U-joints you probably ever put in these shafts. Make sure they're greasable, too. Because, like I said, you're going to want to clean up all the mud and shit out of them, because you're not replacing these unless you have a lot of time in your hands. Now, this kit used to be a little expensive, but now it's extremely reasonable. I think it was $30? Yeah, 30 bucks gets you this kit, so that's not too bad. And you get enough to do both axles, so you get 8 of them in here. And basically, they just sit on top, and you weld them on, so I'll show you what that looks like. Now, the clearances in here are tight, so you may or may not have rubbing issues. If you do, you'll have to grind down a little bit. It'll usually be the weld itself, but these guys sit on the shaft like this. So, as you can see, there's not a whole lot of room in there, but there should be enough that these should fit. So, we're going to take the shafts out, we're going to weld these guys on there. I'm not going to show you how to remove shafts again. If you want to see that, look at the ring clip video. So, let's get that shaft out and start welding. So, now we can really see the damages a lot better. You can see it's very oval. So what it was doing every time you're in four-wheel drive, it's knocking like this every time you go forward, and it's knocking like that every time you go backwards. And it just wobbles the crap out of the ears. So you can actually see where it's split over here too. You can actually see that there's cracks. Like it's actually open. So it actually warped this a little bit. Same on this side. That one was starting to wiggle forward a little. And you can see right here, look, this is the half clip that's supposed to hold it in, and it's just coming free. A lot of hardcore wheelers seem to have these issues. You're just putting so much torque on these things, it physically bends the ears. So this is where chromoly shafts would be helpful, because they can take a lot more force before twisting. Oh yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but, you know, a $30 kit, you know, this might look like a shade tree mechanic solution here, but it's cheap compared to $15 per axle versus if you went chromoly shafts, you're looking at $200 per axle shaft. And that's the outer and the inner. So, you know, this is cheap. This is a junkyard fix for sure, but hey, if it works, you know, it works. So this is what it looks like when it's going to be installed. It just sits on there like that. And it holds the cap in place physically so it can't ever fall out. And it also gives a little strength to the ears. So that's all you really want, right? So they just kind of go on there. We'll weld them in place. You don't want to make these welds super big because, like I said, we need clearance, so we might have to grind it down a little bit once we're all done. But, yeah, you know, it is what it is. Okay, now the fun part of cleaning them up. So I got a C-clip, or I got a C-clamp holding the plate on there. Made sure it's nice and straight, so we're going to put a tack on each side, and then we'll start welding. I'm also going to try and record it with a thermal camera, see what that looks like. How hot's that? It does put a lot of heat into it. When you're welding on something like this, you want to be mindful of the bearings. So, since I was doing this side, it was okay that I was hooked up to the shaft over here, because the power should be going just through the ears and everything. It shouldn't be going to the joint. Now, when you get over here, that's a different story, because the only way this side of the ear is connected is through the joint. So that means that you're sending current through all the bearings and everything, and when the electricity arcs through it, it burns them up and melts them, and it makes them not smooth and not work right. So you never want to weld over bearings. So when we switch to this side of the ear, we're going to want to make sure that our electrode or whatever is hooked up on this side, so that we're not going through the bearings. So just keep that in mind when you're welding, and everything should be okay. So now we're going to switch this whole assembly around and start welding on the other side. Oh man, after dicking around with all this, you really get to understand why it's important to have proper wire that works well. I'm having nothing but fucking issues with this goddamn Lincoln Electric bullshit from Home Depot. Sometimes the wire's pinched and it doesn't go through the fucking thing properly, or, you know, you let go of it for a second, it starts spinning around, so you put it all back, and then later it starts kinking up because it's not fucking in there right. You have to keep cutting all the wire because of all the fucking shittiness and the quality. So, seriously, find the best frickin' wire you can use, because it'll save you in the long run. I've been dicking around with this thing for half an hour to just frickin' get one of these things done. Pain in the ass. So, once you get angry at your welder and finally get everything done, this is what it looks like. So, could be better, could be worse. Good enough for me. It's a Jeep, not a fucking Ferrari. So, I'm gonna get the grinder out and clean these up just a little bit, and I guess we'll test fit. Alright, so after a little bit of grinding, you can soften up the edges and make them look smooth. Now look at that. Beef sandwich, baby. Now it looks like a really thick ear. When you're grinding, you just want to make sure that you're checking to make sure you got the clearance you need when this is at full, whatever you want to call it. So basically, I've focused on these corners right here, just the corners up at the top, just make sure that they're smooth. Towards the back and back here, it doesn't matter. So, you know, just do what you can to make it smooth. Alright, just now we can see if it fits, and if so, I guess we'll paint it. Okay, so we got the hub on and all that good stuff. So if we come in here, and spin it, you can see it gets pretty close to the bolt, but it doesn't quite touch. Now it's not going to be just like this. because the hub's probably not in perfectly straight, but good enough, and you know, bare minimum, we'll grind the head on this bolt down just a little bit. But it looks good, so I think we'll give it some paint and put it in for good. Alright, just finished the other side, so I figured I'd show you what that looks like. So they're extra beefy now. Welds aren't the best, but the welder was cooperating a little bit better than last time, so that's good. A little harder welding at night, but whatever. So there you go. Now we're gonna, you know, grind them, clean them up, and paint them, and they should look like this. Look at that, huh? That's fucking beefy. I'd like to see those motherfuckers break. So this is what it looks like once it's all cleaned up. And I just sat there and grinded down all the stuff on the sides so that it was even. And you just get the edge here. The back, I don't really feel is important, so I just kind of left it as is. But, yeah. So we'll paint this guy up, and I guess we can put him back in. Woohoo! Okay, so now we're in for final fitment, and I'm just taking a look at clearances and see how we're doing. The only thing that I notice is if you come over here, this bolt looks like the shoulder sticks out just a little bit, and if you look at the inner C or whatever, the inner ears, you notice that they touch a little bit right there. You can see the paint where it's marked, just that little line. You just got the littlest bit of contact there at full swing that way. And same on the other side. This bolt, it'll touch just a little bit on when you're full locked, and you can see the lines. So you'd either want to grind that down just a little bit, or grind the shoulders down on the bolts. Or the third option is not giving a fuck and letting it self-clearance. That's only at full lock. When you push it back straight, she's fine. So when she's straight, she's fine. Not a single issue. Now something else you'd want to make sure is when you're welding to try and keep the welds even between one side and the other, because otherwise you'll have high speed vibrations if it's off balance by a lot, because this does spin kind of fast. It spins as fast as the wheel spins, so it's not as important as drive shafts, but it's still kind of important. So you know, if you got vibrations now you know why. Alright, I think it's time to just put it all back together again. Well, the tires are back on, everything's good. So there we have our almost alloy kit. Tell you what, they look friggin' beefy now. I'm not worried about them falling apart anytime soon, so they might actually stand a chance. So, cool. Besides the little bit of rubbing that I was having at full lock, which you can see there pretty well, it's not that big a deal. You know, you could grind down the head of the bolt a little, because you can see how low that sticks down. But I don't think that one's the problem. It's just the left and the right one, this guy. But I'm just gonna let him self-clearance. I'm not really too worried about it. So I'll keep you updated if things change, or you know, I'm not happy with it. But right now I'm very happy with them. So, you know, if you want to do an upgrade to your axle shafts for cheap, but you don't have the cash to put out for some proper alloys, you know, get some chromolys, you know, try some of this almost alloy kit from Iron Rock Off-Road. I'm happy with it. So, there you go. Woo.